Well, really, a very good class here, and especially the top three. I think there's a great deal of quality in the entire trio. The top pair is interesting for me. There's some differences between them. I'm going to land on the black steer because basically he's more market ready today. When you get your hands on him, he's also a calf that transitions better out of the top side of his shoulder into his body wall. When you get him stopped, he actually presents himself more composed in terms of his top side balance. He's a heavy muscled steer that's big in terms of his bone and foot, and he's sound moving. Now, is he as elite looking through the front one of his third of his body as the next two cattle? No, he's not. But I still think he has a show steer look, is attractive in terms of his silhouette. He wins out simply because he's more ready here today. The calf that came in second was the first one hit to gate. I saw that head and neck carriage, that muscle delineation. I said, that one's going to be tough to beat. And he is, because he's a good looking, sound moving calf that's got a lot of shape to him. He's awfully bare in terms of his handle out here. You can see some of that because he's still awfully tight right there behind his forerib. When she does a good job setting him up, but that calf still wants to break and separate right behind his blade. He's just not as composed in terms of his top line. The absolute best looking calf stands in third. He is gorgeous in terms of his side view profile, his silhouette. He is exceptionally sound and he is fed well. They don't have to be the stoutest in terms of muscle for me. That calf needs more. He just needs more top shape. He needs more stoutness from behind. If he has that, then he wins the class with a great deal of ease because I love so many things about him. Even for a guy that says they don't have to be the stoutest, that one needs more muscle shape, in my opinion. Then we come to the opposite in fourth. That is the biggest back, the thickest ended, the biggest body calf of the entire class. And I realize those things. Watch him as he exits the arena. He gets entirely too outside of himself from behind. He's not as good in terms of his structural integrity, but really a powerhouse in terms of product. We got a calf coming next that you like the body and the rib shape. He handles good. He doesn't have the muscle, and he's a calf that struggles in terms of the way that he goes from behind. Young lady does a great job rounding out and closing this class. Long-sided, level design steer that's big in terms of his bone. He's just the lightest muscled and the tightest in terms of his rib. Really good class all the way through. Give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Ryan. Placing in Class 2 lightweight, middle lightweight American steers. First place in that class goes to Kinley Limberg. Second place goes to Carson Kaufman. Third place is Angelica Gonzalez. Fourth is Callie Benavides. And fifth is Sawyer Bogle. And sixth is Megan Steele. Now coming in the ring is our Class 3 American steers. The weights in this class range from 1276 to 1332.
Well, another very good class of cattle, and similar to the last class, I like the top trio really well. But this calf in first just wins for me. That calf of the top three is really the one that grabbed my eye and my attention from the get go in terms of his silhouette, his ring appeal, his presence, and yet he's a muscular, shapely calf, and easily the one that I prefer in terms of his structural integrity of the top three. Just a very, very solid one to win the class. If I'm going to critique him and modify him some, even though he is the soundest calf, he does want to get underneath himself just a shade in terms of how he utilizes his rear hock. Calf that comes in second, if your priority is muscle, power, and stoutness, he might win for you because he does have those things in spades. Really opened up, one that's very burly, handles good. A calf for that amount of muscle and power, I think he puts it together in a nice enough package in terms of his profile. There's no doubt compared to the ones that stand on either side of him, he's shorter in terms of his neck, lower set in terms of his shoulder and front end. And when we get him in motion, well, I think he's sound enough. He does one that wants to shuffle and short stride just a little bit. The calf that comes in three is better looking than the calf that comes in two. He is long-necked and long-bodied and really good in terms of balance. He's the steer that bothers me the most in terms of the way that he moves at the top three. He's the tightest off either end of his skeleton. And as I told the young lady, compared to the two in front of him, he's just one that's flatter in terms of his body and his rib shape. Calf that rolls around next. That's a big back, square-ended one. That's really good in terms of stoutness of feature. For his frame and his height, I think he needs to be deeper in terms of his body. He needs to move more collectively and correctly the way that he goes from behind. The black and white one that comes next, really a pretty attractive steer in terms of profile. Young man does an excellent job showing this calf, one that's sound. He just runs out of muscle and power compared to the ones up above him. The calf that comes next is the opposite. He's stout. He's really, really heavy muscled. He's a calf, though, that as you watch him exit the arena, he's one that gets too up and tight in terms of his hip and his spine, not good enough at the ground. We've got a calf rolling out of the class, level line, good in terms of balance, got to have more power and product. Give him a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. Placings on Class 3 American steers. First place goes to Carson Kaufman. Second place goes to Peyton Harborth. Third place goes to Kinley Limburg. Fourth place goes to Addie Limburg. Fifth place goes to Reed Reiniger. Sixth place goes to Isabella Hartman. And seventh goes to Madison Bogle. Let's give those exhibitors a round of applause. Now coming in the ring is our heavyweight class of America Steers Class 4. In this class, we have 5 steers ranging in weight from 1372 to 1472.
Moving to this class here, I think we've got a lot more differences in this particular group of contemporaries than we have in the other classes. KF that wins for me, he's the really long, neat neck steer that for one of this weight is still very fresh in terms of his appearance and his handle. I think he's good enough in terms of his feet and legs. He's got an ample amount of power and muscle. Now, he doesn't blow you away in terms of body shape. He's not the stoutest one of the class, but he is attractive, fresh, and sound moving. Young ladies, KF that comes into really a good KF in terms of just product. He is so stout up high, really square from behind, a big bone KF. You like all those things about him. You can see as you study him up front, he's not as attractive in terms of his show ring look. He's a little past his prime for me in terms of his degree and finish. More importantly, when we get him in motion, he doesn't get out and glide like the KF that I have up above. We've got his KF that coming in third from the point of his shoulder back. I like him as well as any of them in the class. He's the extra long. He's really good in terms of his lines. I think he's adequate in terms of the way that he goes off either end of his skeleton system. You can see up front, he wants to break and separate behind his shoulder and his blade, and he's a KF that just doesn't compose himself when we put him in motion or when we get him stopped in terms of his top line as well as the next two. Then we got another KF coming around next that's shapely and powerful, really fresh, and I like those things about him. I told that young lady the hip and hind leg just don't work together well enough for that one to advance up in this class any farther. Young lady at the end's got one that's ultra deep bodied and big bone. He's one that's too much of his body weight is in the front 1/3 of his body. He's not as correct in terms of the way that he goes from behind. Give him a nice round of applause, please.
Results of Class 4 heavyweight American steers. First place goes to Kelton Mosier. Second place goes to Elena Pena. Third place goes Angelica Gonzalez. And fourth place goes to Stevie McFarland. Now coming in the ring is our division champion. We'll select our champion American steer. Our 4 class winners. Class 1, Clayton Kerlick. Class 2, Kinley Limberg. Class 3, Carson Kaufman, and Class 4, Kelton Mosier.
Well, as we get ready to pick the American Division champion, y'all been awfully quiet, awfully timid. I know you're cold, but give these kids and these families a big round of applause. Excellent set of cattle in the first division. When you come to South Texas, you expect the American cattle to be good, and I definitely wasn't disappointed. And it's a nice lineup. We'll briefly run through them. The KF that won Class 1, just a very complete steer. And in that particular class, he was the sound-moving KF that had some look. He was by no means the most powerful, but he had enough, and his advantages in terms of structural correctness won out in that particular group of contemporaries. Obviously, when he gets out here, he's a little overwhelmed and overpowered. Class 2 was interesting. There were 3 really nice ones in there. there. KF that won that class elevated out and won out because he's simply more market ready. And I understand that this is not the end for the majority of these steers. They're going to go on to other places, but this is still considered a market show. And so that KF had a considerable amount more finish. He was more ready in terms of his body shape. A KF that's very attractive in terms of his look. Good enough at the ground. Compared to a couple of others out here in this lineup, maybe not as powerful in terms of shape, but still a very nice one. We had another really good trio coming out of 3, but this KF won for me because he was the sound, good-looking, heavy-muscled one. I said he might get a little underneath himself in terms of how he utilizes his rear hog. Does not mean in any way that he's unsound. He does some things very well. KF out of 4 is one that in that particular class was the fresh, sound-moving one. That's why he got up there. He's a KF that gets overwhelmed in terms of body content and muscularity compared to some. The seconds here, that KF's heavy-muscled and powerful. His hip and hind leg aren't good enough. That's a beautiful steer that's got a lot of shape. Needs to be further along. Young lady rolling out here next. Again, we said in that class, if you want just the most muscular, stoutest, burliest one, you can probably use that one to win because he has those advantages over the one that beat him. A KF for me that is not as correct in terms of his silhouette, not as good at the ground, but I like a lot of things about him. Young lady at the back doing a great job. Powerful, burly KF that's just a little past his prime. There's a group of steers, or a pair of steers, that came in together that I am very impressed with. They'll stick together. It's the 2 out of class 3. Congratulations to both.
Results of our Champion American Drive. Our champion comes out of Class 3, Carson Kaufman from Navarro 4-H. And the reserve would be the second place out of that class, Peyton Harborth from Marion FFA. Our next class in the ring is going to be our lightweight British steers. We'll have 5 steers in that class ranging from 938 pounds to 1,108. I've also been asked to let y'all know that the Knights of Columbus concession stand has breakfast tacos, and they will have those till they're sold out. And once those are sold out, starting at 11 a.m., they'll have hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fries, nachos, chili dogs, hot dogs, and frito pies. So if you're getting hungry, wander on over to the Knights of Columbus cafeteria or concession stand.